For 1,000 years, the galaxy laughed at Earth. The name of humanity became a kind of joke told in alien marketplaces, in schools, in council halls, and even in songs. The memory of human wars, human mistakes, and human chaos was not remembered with respect but with scorn. The galaxy saw mankind not as survivors but as savages, creatures who had almost destroyed their own world again and again with wars, greed, and ambition. For the alien empires, Earth was a lesson of what not to become. They said humanity was reckless, violent, and foolish, unworthy of being taken seriously. Stories of Earth were twisted into entertainment. Alien children grew up reading tales of humans fighting each other endlessly, wasting resources, and nearly burning their planet to ashes. They laughed at the strange history of humans reaching the stars only to retreat back into silence. In theaters across alien worlds, comedies showed humans as loud, emotional beings, stumbling into battles they could not win. For many species, mocking humans became tradition. Earth was a ghost planet, a ruined relic of history that offered nothing to the galaxy but amusement. The laughter grew louder as centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, technologies advanced, and new alliances formed across the stars. But Earth was always the same in their memory. The backward world, the joke everyone agreed upon. No one thought humans could ever rise again. No one believed they could matter. And yet, in all their mockery, the galaxy forgot something important. They forgot that human history was not only about war and mistakes, it was also about survival. Humans had always been underestimated. From the beginning of their existence, they faced climates that killed, predators that hunted, disasters that destroyed, and yet they lived. When their world froze, they built fire. When beasts stronger than them attacked, they made weapons. When the land could no longer feed them, they learned to grow food in ways no one thought possible. Even when they fought among themselves, they always found a way to rebuild. But the galaxy did not see this side of humanity. They only saw the failures, the destruction, the endless conflicts. They laughed because they believed humans had burned themselves out, and in a way it looked true. After humanity's first age of space travel, they had vanished from galactic maps. They stopped speaking to other worlds, stopped sending ships into the stars, and their voice became silent. To outsiders, it looked like the end. Aliens said that humans had finally destroyed themselves with their own fire, and they shook their heads in mock pity before turning their laughter into stories told for fun. Over time, humans became less of a people and more of a symbol. When aliens wanted to insult each other, they compared their rivals to humans. To be called as foolish as Earth was the greatest insult in galactic politics. The galaxy united in this one thing, the belief that humans were worthless. 1,000 years of jokes, 1,000 years of laughter, 1,000 years of forgetting that once, long ago, mankind had made even the strongest civilizations cautious. But on Earth itself, the story was different. Hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, humanity endured. They rebuilt quietly, not with the arrogance of empires, but with the determination of survivors. They carried their pain and shame like a heavy weight, but they also carried something else. Memory. Deep inside their history, they remembered the times when the galaxy had not laughed. They remembered the wars they had fought and survived. They remembered the victories that had shaken far greater powers. And even in silence, they prepared. The galaxy, lost in its arrogance, never asked the simple question. What if the humans were not truly gone? What if the silence was not weakness, but patience? They believed Earth was finished, a dead world. But every joke, every insult, every mocking word was like fuel to a fire waiting to burn again. The laughter lasted so long that it seemed permanent. Generations of alien children grew up never fearing the name of Earth. Galactic historians treated humanity as a side note, a failed species that had once touched the stars and then collapsed. To them, Earth was an old scar that could never bleed again. But history has a way of circling back. The galaxy had forgotten that fear and respect are not given forever, they are earned, and they can also be reawakened. The 1,000 years of laughter blinded them to the truth that was waiting in silence. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was simply waiting. And when the waiting ended, When the silence broke, the galaxy would no longer laugh after the 1,000 years of laughter. When the galaxy thought humanity was finished, Earth lived in silence. To outsiders it looked like nothing moved on the blue planet. No ships left its skies, no signals reached the stars, and no colonies claimed new worlds. The galaxy believed humans had fallen into darkness, but inside that silence something else was happening. Humanity was rebuilding. The silence was not weakness, it was protection. The people of Earth had learned from their mistakes. Long ago, when they first reached the stars, they rushed forward too quickly. They had spread their ships far and wide, but their greed and their pride had broken them. This time, they would not make the same mistakes. This time, they rebuilt with patience. In the ruined cities of the old world, humans started again. Generations lived with less, but they built stronger foundations. The survivors taught their children not only how to live, but how to endure. They learned to use their planet's resources wisely, because they knew waste had once nearly destroyed them. Old technologies were repaired, then improved. Machines that once poisoned the world were redesigned to heal it. Science became their silent weapon, and every discovery was hidden from the galaxy's watchful eyes. People told stories of the old times, not with pride, but as warnings. Parents whispered to children about the age when humans had almost destroyed themselves, and they said, "Never again." The new humanity was quiet, but inside they were sharper than ever before. Their silence was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of a hunter waiting for the right moment. For hundreds of years, Earth's skies stayed empty. No alien visitors came because no one cared to look at what they thought was a broken world. That gave humanity the freedom to prepare without interruption. Hidden under mountains and deep oceans, they built new cities. These were not the fragile cities of old, but strongholds powered by energy the galaxy had never seen. They studied the stars, mapped every corner of the galaxy, and remembered every insult spoken against their name. The galaxy forgot Earth, but Earth never forgot the galaxy. Every mocking story, every laugh told across the stars was carried back to humans by secret traders and travelers. These words were not wounds. They became fuel. They made humanity's determination stronger. The more the galaxy laughed, the more Earth prepared in silence. Generations passed, and humanity became different. They were no longer the same reckless species that once burned too brightly. Their patience became their strength. They tested new weapons in hidden lands, weapons that could shatter fleets without leaving a trace. They experimented with machines that could heal bodies, extend lives, and give them endurance no other species had. They studied alien languages, alien cultures, alien weaknesses. All this knowledge was gathered quietly, stored away like arrows waiting in a quiver. And through all of this, the galaxy still laughed. They believed humans were gone. They did not see the hidden ships rising in Earth's skies, cloaked with technology more advanced than their own. They did not know about the silent fleets gathering in secret, fleets built not for exploration this time, but for defense and, when needed, vengeance. The silence shaped humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. They learned not to waste effort, not to show weakness, and not to reveal their true power until the right time. They trained soldiers not just to fight with weapons, but with discipline and patience. They trained thinkers to outsmart entire governments. They trained builders to create machines that could last centuries. Humanity had become sharper, harder, and far more dangerous than before. But even as they prepared, they did not forget compassion. Humans remembered the pain of being mocked, the pain of being underestimated, and they swore to protect each other above all else. Their unity became stronger than any empire. On Earth, no one stood alone. In silence, they had learned the true meaning of strength. It was not about conquering others, but about surviving together. To the galaxy, Earth remained a dead world, a forgotten story. Alien maps marked it as nothing more than a backwater planet. Politicians used the name human as an insult. But the truth was far more dangerous. While the galaxy mocked, humanity sharpened its claws. While the galaxy laughed, Earth built its shield. And while the galaxy slept, humanity prepared to wake. The silence of those years was not empty. It was alive with invention, training, planning, and patience. Every new generation of humans carried the same secret promise. When the time comes, the galaxy will remember us. Not with laughter, but with fear. The long silence of Earth was finally beginning to change. For generations, humans had lived quietly, working in secret, rebuilding their world, and preparing for a future that no one else in the galaxy could imagine. But silence does not last forever. Just as dawn follows the night, the first signs of humanity's awakening began to show. It started with small things. A faint signal, sent carefully across the stars, carrying no name, no identity, only a test of how far their reach had grown. The signal was coded so deeply that no alien listening could trace it back to Earth. To outsiders, it seemed like a burst of static, nothing important. But for humanity, it was proof. Their technology had become powerful enough to reach across the galaxy unseen. On Earth itself, great underground cities were no longer just homes for survival. They had grown into strongholds of knowledge and power. Schools trained children in sciences far ahead of anything the galaxy possessed. Factories hidden beneath oceans built machines that could slip through space undetected. Laboratories worked on medicines and enhancements that made humans faster, stronger, and more resilient. Humanity was no longer fragile. Each generation was sharper than the last. Their bodies and minds improved quietly, as if Earth itself was forging a weapon in secret. The first true sign of awakening, however, came when a hidden fleet left Earth's skies. Not one or two ships, but dozens, rising silently through the clouds. These ships did not blaze with noise and light as the old ships once had. They were ghosts, covered with cloaking technology that even the most advanced alien sensors could not detect. They slipped into space like shadows, spreading across the galaxy in quiet exploration. These ships did not go to conquer, at least not yet. They went to watch. They observed alien worlds, learned about new technologies, and listened to conversations of leaders who still mocked humanity as a forgotten race. The crews sent their information back to Earth, creating a library of knowledge so vast that no other species could match it. For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity was not just surviving, they were moving. They were stretching their wings again, though carefully, like a predator testing the air before the hunt. Some of the galaxy began to notice odd things. A merchant ship might vanish near empty space, only to reappear with no memory of where it had been. A military satellite might stop working, only to start again weeks later with no signs of damage. A fleet of warships might detect a shadow in space, but when they fired, nothing was there. These strange events were dismissed as malfunctions, bad luck, or imagination. No one thought of humans. Why would they? Earth was forgotten. Humanity was finished. Or so they believed. But not everyone was blind. A few alien scholars, the kind who studied history and old records, began to whisper uneasy words. They remembered the time when humans had risen too quickly, too brightly, and frightened the galaxy with their ambition. They wondered if perhaps Earth was not truly dead. Their warnings were ignored, laughed at just as humanity had once been laughed at. The humans? They are nothing, leaders said. Even if they still exist, they are weak, broken, and lost. Back on Earth, the awakening grew stronger. The younger generations no longer asked only about survival. They asked about destiny. They looked at the stars not with fear, but with hunger. They trained in simulators that prepared them for space battles, not because they wanted war, but because they knew war would eventually come to them. They studied alien tactics, languages, and weaknesses. Some of them even left Earth in disguise, living among aliens as traders or workers, gathering knowledge and spreading rumors that hid the truth. Humanity was no longer the species that rushed forward blindly. Now, every move was careful, every plan hidden beneath layers of secrecy. They understood patience better than any other race in the galaxy. They had waited for 1,000 years, and they could wait longer if needed. But the first steps of awakening were already unstoppable. The silence had cracked. The galaxy just didn't know it yet. Inside the Council of Worlds, where alien leaders gathered, small disturbances began to appear. Trade routes disrupted, strange shadows in deep space, rumors of ships that came and went without identification. Some leaders grew nervous. Others laughed and said, "It is nothing. The galaxy is too vast. Strange things happen all the time." But deep inside, a few of them felt an old chill they could not explain, a fear buried in their memory. The fear of humans. On Earth, the people whispered a new promise. They would no longer be the forgotten children of the stars. Their time was coming again. The galaxy might not see it yet, but the first signs of their return were already spread like seeds in the dark. The hunter was no longer asleep. The hunter was opening its eyes. The 1,000 years of laughter were beginning to fade, though the galaxy did not yet realize it. Soon, very soon, they would remember why humanity had once been feared. And when that moment came, there would be no more laughter. Only silence, and the sound of fear echoing across the stars. The galaxy had grown used to laughing at Earth. For 1,000 years, humans were seen as weak, broken, and too insignificant to matter. They were mocked in stories, insulted in politics, and dismissed in councils. But deep inside Earth's heart, something was changing. The constant humiliation had built not weakness, but fire. Slowly, silently, humans were preparing for the day they would rise again. And this preparation began with a single spark of defiance. It started small, almost invisible. A young group of human explorers built ships that could travel further than anyone thought Earth could manage. These ships were not beautiful or shiny like the ones built by the great empires, but they were strong and clever. They were made with limited resources, but every piece of metal, every engine, and every weapon had a purpose. They reflected the human spirit itself, practical, stubborn, and unbreakable. The explorers did not go to fight wars or start trouble. At first, they simply wanted to prove to themselves that humanity was not finished. They wanted to see the stars again, not as beggars but as explorers, as equals. When they reached distant worlds, they found species who had also suffered under the arrogance of the great empires. These smaller races were ignored, pushed aside, and treated as unimportant, just like Earth. For the first time in centuries, humans realized they were not alone in their pain. The spark grew brighter. Humans began to form secret friendships with these smaller races. They shared food, medicine, and simple technology. In return, they received stories, knowledge, and trust. Slowly, a network began to form across the galaxy. It was not a mighty empire or a grand council. It was something much more dangerous. It was unity, born from shared suffering. When the powerful empires noticed this, they laughed again. They believed no group of weaklings could ever challenge their power. But what they did not understand was that every act of kindness, every small alliance, and every secret bond was fueling humanity's return. The humans were building something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. A foundation of loyalty, respect, and purpose. The real turning point came during a small conflict on the edge of the galaxy. A minor empire tried to crush a tiny colony that had dared to resist its taxes and demands. Normally, this would have been ignored by everyone. No one risked their lives for such weak colonies. But this time, the humans appeared. With only a handful of ships, they stood between the colony and the Empire's fleet. The galaxy laughed again. How could Earth stop anyone? But the laughter died when the battle began. The human ships fought with a kind of desperation the galaxy had forgotten. They used tactics that seemed reckless but in truth were brilliant. They turned their weaknesses into traps, their small size into speed, and their lack of numbers into precision. Against all odds, they won. The Empire's fleet was forced to retreat, humiliated and broken. The colony was saved. The humans did not demand payment, land, or control. Instead, they simply said, "Remember who stood with you when no one else would." That moment changed everything. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy looked at Earth not with laughter, but with fear and curiosity. Who were these humans, who had been mocked for centuries yet still had the courage to fight? Who were these people who stood up for the weak when no one else dared? The spark had become a flame. More colonies began to whisper about Earth. Small races who had once lived in silence now reached out for help. And every time humanity answered. Sometimes they brought medicine. Sometimes they brought food. Sometimes they brought weapons and ships. But no matter what they brought, they always brought hope. The great empires grew uneasy. Their spies reported strange things. Human ships moving faster than expected, human weapons improving at alarming rates, and human alliances growing wider each year. The empires tried to dismiss these reports as exaggerations. But deep down, they remembered the old stories. Stories of the ancient wars, when humans had been feared as unstoppable fighters. And they began to wonder, could history be repeating itself? For the humans, there was no going back. They had suffered too much humiliation to stop now. Every victory, no matter how small, fueled their determination. Every ally gained gave them more strength. They knew the galaxy was watching, and they wanted the galaxy to remember. The spark of defiance spread across Earth as well. Children grew up no longer ashamed of their heritage but proud of it. They heard stories of human bravery, of battles won against impossible odds, of kindness shown when others turned away. These children grew into soldiers, scientists, and leaders who believed in Earth's future. For the first time in centuries, the people of Earth felt united. The galaxy had thought Earth was weak because it lacked numbers, ships, and territory. But they had forgotten one thing: humans never needed much to fight. All they needed was a reason, and now they had one. The day would come when humanity's power would shake the stars. But that day began here with a single spark of defiance, a single act of courage, and a single promise made to the galaxy. Earth would not be mocked forever. The laughter that had lasted 1,000 years was beginning to fade. And in its place, the first whispers of fear began to spread. Humanity was rising, and the galaxy was about to remember why it had once feared mankind. The galaxy had laughed for 1,000 years, and even when the first strange events began, many still mocked the idea that humanity could be behind them. But now the laughter was starting to sound hollow. The strange shadows in space, the vanished ships, the quiet disruption of trade routes. These things were no longer just rare accidents. They were happening too often, too carefully, to be dismissed as random chance. The galaxy was beginning to feel uneasy, though few dared to say the word human. The turning tide began with a single event that the galaxy could not ignore. A great armada from one of the most powerful alien empires set out to conquer a rebellious colony on the edge of their territory. The fleet was massive, hundreds of warships, each bristling with weapons, each confident in its strength. For generations, no one had stood against them successfully. They were feared everywhere they went. But as they traveled through deep space, they encountered something unexpected. A small group of ships appeared on their scanners, moving in ways no alien vessel had ever moved before. The alien fleet laughed at first. How could so few ships dare to block their path? They expected an easy battle, perhaps even entertainment. They charged forward, weapons blazing. What happened next silenced them. The human ships did not fight like anything the galaxy had seen. They moved too fast, too sharp, vanishing from sensors and reappearing where no one expected. Their weapons tore through the alien warships with precision, striking weak points as if the humans knew their designs better than they did. Entire cruisers exploded before they could even return fire. Command ships, thought to be untouchable, were disabled in minutes. The battle did not last long. Out of hundreds of alien ships, only a handful survived, limping back to their empire with shattered hulls and broken spirits. They told stories of ghost ships, invisible enemies, and a level of strategy that seemed almost impossible. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy trembled with a familiar fear. Whispers spread quickly. Who could these shadow fleets belong to? Some said it was a new species rising in power. Others insisted it was impossible for anyone to defeat such a strong empire so easily. But a few, the oldest and most cautious voices, whispered the truth. It is the humans. They have returned. The turning tide was not only in battle, it was in spirit. On Earth, when news of the victory returned, the people did not cheer recklessly. They remained calm, focused, but inside, they felt a fire that had been sleeping for centuries. The younger generations who had only heard stories of humiliation now saw proof of their strength. Humanity was no longer the mocked species, hiding in the shadows. They had shown their power to the galaxy, even if their name was not yet spoken openly. The galaxy, however, was divided in its response. Some empires grew frightened, recalling the old tales of human ambition and ruthlessness. They began strengthening their borders, preparing fleets, and forming alliances. Others refused to believe the truth. They said, "It cannot be humans. They are too weak, too forgotten." They comforted themselves with denial, because the thought of humanity's return was too frightening to accept. But denial could not stop the change. More and more signs appeared. Small fleets disappeared without explanation. Powerful stations were hacked and shut down, their systems infiltrated by codes no alien could understand. Colonies that had lived under the thumb of empires for centuries suddenly found themselves freed, their oppressors defeated by unseen hands. Every victory carried the same message. A shadow was moving through the galaxy, a shadow that no one could stop. Humanity's awakening was no longer silent. It was a tide that no one could hold back. Yet the humans themselves remained disciplined. They did not reveal their full numbers, their true strength, or even their homeworld. They struck quickly, then vanished into the dark. This mystery made them even more terrifying. An enemy you can see is frightening, but an enemy you cannot see is far worse. Alien councils gathered in secret, arguing over how to respond. Some wanted to attack immediately, to crush the shadow force before it grew stronger. Others warned that such a move could spark a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. And behind all these arguments was one unspoken truth: the galaxy remembered. Deep in their history, buried beneath 1,000 years of mockery, was the memory of humanity's rise. They remembered the fearless explorers, the relentless fighters, the stubborn survivors who never bowed to anyone. They remembered why they had feared mankind in the first place. For humanity, the tide was turning in their favor, but they did not grow careless. They had learned from their fall 1,000 years ago. This time, they would not rush, they would not expose themselves too soon. Instead, they tightened their grip slowly, step by step, as the galaxy grew more nervous. Like a storm on the horizon, humanity's return was no longer a question. It was a certainty. The 1,000 years of laughter had ended. Now the galaxy was beginning to whisper, to tremble, to prepare for what was coming. And humanity, silent but unstoppable, was ready to show them why the fear had never truly died. The tide had turned, and nothing in the stars could stop what was about to unfold. The galaxy was restless. The silence after humanity's sudden victories felt heavier than any war. Every empire, every council, every ruler in the stars whispered the same question. What if the humans had truly returned? For 1,000 years, the great powers had mocked Earth, called it weak, forgotten, useless. But now, their fleets were vanishing, their stations collapsing, and their pride breaking. Fear spread like fire through the galaxy. The alien empires had always relied on alliances. Whenever one species grew too ambitious, the others would unite against it. This system had kept the galaxy balanced for centuries. They believed unity would protect them from any threat. But when the shadow of humanity appeared, these alliances began to break. The first cracks showed in the Galactic Council itself. Delegates from the strongest empires argued day and night. Some demanded immediate action. Send fleets, hunt down the shadow, destroy them before they grew stronger. Others warned that such a move would only provoke disaster. They reminded everyone of the old records, the ancient wars against humans, the losses suffered even when the galaxy had united before. The room was filled with shouting, threats, and mistrust. Instead of unity, there was chaos. Old rivalries began to rise again. Two neighboring empires accused each other of secretly supporting the humans. Another claimed that their trade routes were being attacked not by humans but by their supposed allies. Suspicion poisoned every meeting. No one trusted anyone anymore. The galaxy, which had laughed together at Earth for centuries, was now tearing itself apart. Meanwhile, Humanity's shadow fleets continued their quiet war. They did not fight for territory or glory. Instead, they struck at weak points, supply lines, command hubs, and fuel depots. They vanished before counterattacks could arrive, leaving only ruins and unanswered questions. Sometimes, they even left messages burned into wreckage. Simple symbols, old human marks, reminders that they were watching. These small victories created big waves of fear. For the smaller species of the galaxy, the ones who had always lived under the rule of stronger empires, the return of humanity was not a nightmare, it was hope. For generations, they had suffered under cruel overlords, paying heavy taxes, sending their youth to serve in foreign armies, and living without freedom. Now they saw a chance. If the humans were truly back, if the mighty empires could be broken, then perhaps the weak could rise. Whispers of rebellion began spreading, colonies secretly planning revolts, inspired by the Shadow's victories. This terrified the ruling powers even more. They realized the danger was not just humanity, it was the collapse of order itself. If rebellion spread, their control would crumble from within. Fear pushed them into desperate actions. Some empires sent fleets not against the humans but against their own colonies, crushing anyone who dared to hope. Others betrayed their allies, breaking treaties and seizing resources for themselves. Trust was gone. One by one, alliances fell apart. A great trade coalition shattered when its leaders accused each other of hiding human spies. A powerful military pact broke when one empire refused to send ships, fearing it would expose them to human ambushes. In some places, allies who had fought side by side for centuries suddenly turned their weapons on each other. The galaxy was no longer united against humanity, it was collapsing into chaos. Humanity watched all this with patience. They did not rush forward. They did not announce their presence. They allowed the fear to do their work for them. Every broken alliance, every betrayal, every rebellion made their task easier. The humans had learned from the past. 1,000 years ago, they had been defeated because the galaxy had united against them. This time, they would make sure no such unity ever returned. On Earth, leaders debated carefully. Some wanted to strike openly, to reveal their strength and reclaim their honor. But the wiser voices urged caution. They reminded everyone that fear was their greatest weapon. As long as the galaxy remained divided, humanity would grow stronger in the shadows. Their time would come, but not yet. For now, they let the galaxy destroy itself. In the halls of alien power, despair grew deeper. Leaders who had once been arrogant now whispered in fear behind closed doors. Every night, they wondered if their fleets would be the next to vanish. Every day, they argued with supposed allies who no longer trusted them. The galaxy's mighty order, built over centuries, was breaking apart faster than anyone imagined. And then came the clearest sign of all. Two of the greatest empires, ancient rivals who had once sworn to stand together against any outside threat, turned on each other. One launched a surprise attack, accusing the other of helping the humans in secret. Entire worlds burned, not because of humanity's weapons, but because of suspicion and fear. The galaxy was eating itself alive. The humans did not fire a single shot in that war. They simply watched from the darkness, waiting, learning, and preparing. Their plan was working. The galaxy had mocked Earth for 1,000 years, but now they were too busy tearing each other apart to laugh. The alliances that had once seemed unbreakable were gone. All that remained was fear, betrayal, and the growing shadow of humanity. The broken alliances were more than political accidents. They were proof that the galaxy remembered. Somewhere deep inside, even if they denied it with their words, every species knew the truth. They remembered why humanity had once been feared. They remembered that mankind was not just another species. They were survivors, fighters, and strategists unlike any other. And now, as the stars fell into chaos, they knew the tide could not be stopped. Humanity's return was not just a rumor. It was destiny. The galaxy was falling into chaos. Alliances were broken, trust was destroyed, and fear spread everywhere. The great empires, once proud and confident, were now fighting among themselves. Their fleets were weak from betrayal, their armies divided, and their people restless. And in this moment of confusion, Earth began to rise again. For 1,000 years, Earth had been forgotten. Other civilizations had mocked it, calling humans weak and backward. But while the galaxy was laughing, humanity was preparing. In secret, they rebuilt their strength. The children of Earth grew up not with arrogance, but with hunger, the hunger to reclaim their place among the stars. They studied war, strategy, and science. They built fleets not for show but for survival. And most of all, they learned patience. Now the time for patience was ending. On Earth, leaders gathered in a great council. Generals, scientists, and commanders all stood together, united in one purpose. They had watched long enough. The galaxy was distracted, torn apart by suspicion and rebellion. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. It was time to step out of the shadows. But they did not do it carelessly. Humanity understood the weight of their return. One wrong step and the galaxy might unite against them again. So their rise had to be measured, careful, and unstoppable. Their first move was not to declare war but to reclaim their old colonies. Worlds that had once belonged to humans, abandoned long ago, were now brought back under Earth's flag. Some of these colonies had survived in secret, hidden for centuries, waiting for the signal. Others had mixed with alien cultures, but when they saw Earth's fleets arrive, they remembered who they were. Hope returned to them and they pledged loyalty once more. The first worlds lit up with human banners. The galaxy noticed, but they were too divided to respond. Some mocked again, saying Earth was weak and foolish. Others whispered in fear, realizing this was only the beginning. The humans ignored the noise. They kept moving forward. With every world they reclaimed, Earth grew stronger. Their fleets expanded, their armies swelled, and their influence spread. What shocked the galaxy most was the discipline of the humans. Unlike the alien empires, who wasted resources in endless arguments and betrayals, the humans moved with perfect unity. Every ship, every soldier, every leader worked toward the same goal. They were not just rising, they were rising with purpose. Soon, the smaller species of the galaxy began to turn their eyes toward Earth. For centuries, they had been trapped under the rule of larger empires, treated like tools, slaves, or subjects. But now, with the empires weakened, they saw a chance. And when they looked at humanity, they did not see conquerors. They saw survivors, a people who had suffered mockery and isolation for 1,000 years and still endured. Many of these smaller species reached out in secret, sending messages to Earth. They wanted to join, to fight, to rise alongside humanity. This was exactly what Earth had hoped for. Humanity had always believed in alliances built on respect, not fear. Unlike the alien empires who ruled with cruelty, humans offered partnership. They promised freedom to the oppressed, protection to the weak, and justice where there had been none. And so, slowly Earth was not rising alone. It was lifting others with it. The galaxy began to realize the danger. Not only was Earth rebuilding its fleets, but it was also becoming a symbol. To the fearful, it was a symbol of terror, a shadow that could not be stopped. To the oppressed, it was a symbol of hope, a new power that might finally bring fairness. Either way, Earth could no longer be ignored. The turning point came when a human fleet appeared at the edge of a great war. Two alien empires, once allies, were fighting brutally, burning each other's worlds. Their fleets clashed in the darkness, neither side willing to surrender. And then, suddenly, human ships arrived. They did not come with threats or mockery. They came with calm precision. They disabled both fleets in minutes, striking with weapons no one had seen before. And when the battle ended, Earth did not claim the territory for itself. Instead, it ordered both empires to withdraw, declaring the war over. The galaxy was stunned. Humanity had shown its strength but also its control. They could have conquered both sides, but they chose instead to show discipline and authority. It was a message to everyone. Earth had returned, and it would not play by the old rules. From that day, whispers turned into fear. The galaxy remembered the old stories of how humanity had once stood against all of them and nearly won. They realized those stories were not myths. Humanity was proving them true, step by step. And this time, there was no unity left to resist them. On Earth, the people celebrated. For centuries, they had carried the shame of being mocked and forgotten. Now they walked with pride again. Children grew up hearing stories of victory, not defeat. Soldiers trained not for survival but for destiny. Humanity's spirit, once buried, was shining brighter than ever. But the leaders of Earth knew the fight was not over. They had risen, yes, but the galaxy was still vast, filled with enemies who feared them. The empires would not remain silent forever. At some point, they would strike back. Humanity's rise was only the beginning of a greater storm. Still, Earth stood ready. For the first time in 1,000 years, it was no longer the forgotten world at the edge of the stars. It was the center of change, the force that would shape the future. The galaxy had mocked them for too long, but now it remembered. Humanity had risen again, stronger than ever, and the stars would never be the same. The galaxy was no longer the same. For 1,000 years, humanity had been treated as a joke, a forgotten race at the edge of space. The mighty empires had laughed at Earth, called its people weak, and believed humans were unworthy of respect. But now, those same empires could not sleep in peace. Everywhere they turned, there was a reminder of why their ancestors had once feared mankind. It started quietly. Human fleets began appearing where no one expected them, on the borders of great empires, in war zones, even in places thought unreachable. Their ships were unlike anything seen before. They were fast, silent, and powerful. They struck with perfect accuracy, disabling enemy fleets without wasting a single shot. Whole battles were ended in minutes, not days. For the galaxy, it was terrifying. For humanity, it was only the beginning. But the most frightening thing was not just the power of Earth's weapons. It was the way humans fought. They did not kill for pleasure, nor did they destroy for glory. They fought with cold precision, showing mercy when it was deserved, but showing no hesitation when it was not. To the galaxy, this discipline was more terrifying than chaos. An enemy who kills recklessly can be predicted. But an enemy who kills only with purpose? That is unstoppable. Soon, stories began to spread. A human fleet saving a small world from pirates. Human soldiers defending weak species against cruel overlords. Human scientists rebuilding broken colonies with technology no one else understood. At first, many thought these were lies. But the stories kept growing, carried by refugees and survivors. The galaxy realized the truth. Humanity was not only strong, it was becoming a force of justice. That was even more dangerous. For centuries, the galaxy had ruled through fear and domination. But now, the oppressed were looking to Earth for hope. Small races that had never dared to resist their masters suddenly rose in rebellion, carrying human banners beside their own. When they fought, they did not feel alone anymore. They knew Earth would come. And when Earth came, victory followed. This terrified the great empires. They had mocked Earth for so long that they forgot what unity could look like. Now they were watching it happen. And they remembered the old histories, the wars of the past, when humanity had stood alone against countless enemies and had almost won. Back then, the galaxy had survived because humans were outnumbered. But now, humans were not alone. They had allies, they had technology, and they had the will to fight. Meetings were held in secret chambers across the stars. Leaders of great empires whispered to each other, debating what to do. Some argued that humanity must be crushed before it grew any stronger. Others were afraid to even try, remembering the recent defeats. And some, the wisest among them, admitted the truth aloud. Perhaps it was too late. Humanity had already risen. The galaxy would never be the same. And they were right. Humanity's rise was not only about power, it was about memory. The galaxy remembered the strength of humans, their endless will to survive, and their refusal to bow to anyone. Every empire, every species, every leader began to ask themselves the same question. If Earth could endure 1,000 years of mockery and still return stronger, what could possibly destroy them now? The final proof came during a great battle. One of the most powerful empires, desperate to prove it was still strong, launched an attack on a human ally. They expected Earth to retreat, to stay silent, or to lose. Instead, within hours, an enormous human fleet appeared. The battle was swift, brutal, and decisive. The Empire's fleet was crushed, its ships scattered, its generals humiliated. And when the fighting ended, the humans did something no one expected. They did not take slaves, they did not destroy cities, and they did not claim territory. Instead, they gave the defeated Empire a choice: accept peace and respect, or face humanity's full strength. The message was clear. Earth did not rise to enslave, it rose to be remembered. From that day, everything changed. No longer did anyone laugh at Earth. The mockery was gone, replaced by silence, then by fear, and finally by respect. The galaxy now treated humans as a power equal to, or even greater than, the ancient empires. Small species cheered their name, enemies whispered their warnings, and allies placed their trust in them. Humanity had claimed its place not through arrogance but through patience, unity, and strength. On Earth, the people looked up at the stars with pride. For generations, their ancestors had carried the shame of being forgotten, laughed at, and dismissed. Now those same stars echoed with the memory of their rise. Children grew up not hearing stories of weakness, but of triumph. The galaxy had remembered, and it would never forget again. But humanity itself did not grow arrogant. They knew the galaxy was vast and full of challenges. There would always be wars, dangers, and enemies. But after enduring 1,000 years of humiliation, they also knew something deeper. They could survive anything. No empire, no fleet, no galaxy-wide hatred could erase them. Humanity's strength was not just in weapons or ships. It was in their spirit, their refusal to break, and their ability to rise again and again, no matter how many times they were struck down. The galaxy had mocked Earth for 1,000 years. But now, as they watched human fleets move across the stars, they remembered why humanity had always been feared. Not because humans were cruel, not because they were monsters, but because they were unbreakable. And in a galaxy filled with countless species, that was the most dangerous power of all. The stars would never laugh at Earth again. Instead, they would whisper its name with awe, fear, and respect. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy remembered.